You're listening to the Grit to Growth podcast. Real talk with real business owners and professionals who built their freedom the hard way and now want more time, money, and impact.
Hello and welcome back, everyone. Today I got joining me from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Jon Brudvig. He's a biotech innovator who's passionate about turning cutting-edge lab science into real-world health breakthroughs. Jon's work focuses on lysosomal health, a powerful area of research that's sharpening the future of how we treat rare and common diseases, and even how we age. Whether it's healthy aging, longevity, or next-gen therapies, Jon's at the front lines of what's next in medicine. Jon, welcome in.
Thanks, Levi. Great to be here.
Yeah, so Jon, let's start out with something foundational here. For myself and those who aren't familiar, what exactly is lysosomal health?
Yeah, so probably the first time you've discussed this on your podcast.
Yep,
but I'm happy to make
is.
the intro. So inside each of our cells in our bodies, we have this specialized compartment called a lysosome. And a lysosome is where things go to be recycled. So you can imagine all the different materials you have in your cells. Just like materials in a house or any other structure, they break down over time. And you need to recycle them and bring new materials in. And the lysosome is really the structure that's responsible for doing that. So every day, as you know, during times when you're not eating, for example, your body still needs amino acids. It still needs the building blocks of proteins, and it has to get them from somewhere. So it'll take old materials and break them down into those foundational building blocks and push them back to the rest of your cells. And then on the flip side, it's getting rid of wastes. So it's doing lots of important things.
So how does that connect to things like disease treatment or aging and longevity?
Yeah. Well, so in all of us, as we get older, our lysosomes start to work more poorly. This is happening to you right now. It's happening to me, and it's going to accelerate as we get older. And when that happens, your cells aren't very happy. It drives inflammatory processes throughout your whole body. It's a big contributor to a lot of diseases like Parkinson's disease. There's potentially components to a broad range of common diseases. But then we also have these rare diseases where, unfortunately, some people are born with a genetic condition where one part of their lysosome, one of the genes that makes part of the lysosome, is dysfunctional. It doesn't work. And when you're missing an essential part of the lysosome, the effects are pretty devastating. Your lysosome essentially can stop functioning almost entirely, at least certain aspects of it. And when that happens, cells die. You can develop dementia when you're a child. You can see all these diseases of old age sort of converted into an early onset form. And it's just, there are these terribly devastating conditions that until very recently had no effective therapies. So that's where I've spent the bulk of my career, is trying to develop medicines for those conditions.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That cleared up a lot for someone who's not a healthcare background like myself. And like you said, probably a lot of our listeners, that is a very nice basic way of explaining it.
Great.
All right. Now that we got the science, what are you currently focused on? And can you give a snapshot of the work you're doing right now?
Yeah, so it's there are a few pieces to that. You know, my full-time job, I work as a drug developer for a company called Amicus Therapeutics, and we have a couple of drugs on the market for rare lysosomal diseases. So I get to work on R&D for those diseases, testing those drugs in different applications, trying to learn more about how they work and how they can work better. And then also developing new drugs and testing, new strategies for treating diseases where there's still a lot of unmet need in how patients are treated. So I'm spending a ton of time in that space. I've also been very interested in sort of taking the learnings from that biotech and that pharma space and applying it more broadly. How can we talked about how our lysosomes are working more poorly as we get older. Well, what can we do about that? How can we use different drugs and supplements and lifestyle interventions to prevent that decline and to preserve our health as we get older and to improve our quality of life? So I've spent a lot of time researching and educating on that front, sort of working towards building an online presence, and discussing those topics and bringing people together to discuss those topics. And so, yeah, I mean, between those two, those are taking up most of my professional time.
I would say it would be. Can you give us like a small tidbit on how you've actually implemented something that you've seen improvement?
Yeah, well, I mean, there are lots of examples there. I mean, personally, exercise, right? Like we all know this already. That's not going to be a surprise to anyone.
Yep.
But exercise is an intervention that does a lot of really powerful things. And one of the things that it does is it activates these pathways in your cells that boost your lysosomal health. So that's perhaps an obvious one. Things that are maybe slightly less obvious, there are there are pharma strategies. There are drugs that are used for other conditions that are being repurposed in this sort of healthy aging space to see what if someone who doesn't have a disease uses a low dose of one of these drugs, can that actually preserve their health over time and prevent the development of disease? And that's something that I've spent a lot of energy researching and learning and experimenting with.
So can you kind of walk me down what your career path looked like leading up to what you're currently doing, and how, if someone's interested, kind of
Yeah.
tips and stuff along that way?
Yeah, sure. I think a lot of people don't realize how much biotech we have in South Dakota.
Yeah,
There's
huge
quite
industry.
it is, absolutely, and it's growing, and there's a lot of really talented people working here, both for local companies and remotely for companies in other geographies. But I got my start basically in my 20s. I was the founder of a coffee shop in Sioux Falls called Cafea Roastery with a
Oh
couple
yeah.
of friends. There are three locations still doing really well. And so, that was sort of my first career, and I really enjoyed that. And I started to find myself really getting into the science of coffee roasting, and in other domains of my life, becoming very interested in science and health. So it kind of led naturally into going back to school for biology. I went back later in my 20s to get my undergrad and eventually my PhD, and I did that at the University of South Dakota. And when you do that, when you do a biology PhD, most of your time is actually spent working in the lab. And the lab that I worked in was Jill Weimer's lab at Sanford Research in Sioux Falls. And that's where I was introduced to these rare pediatric lysosomal disorders. I learned all the tools of the trade and developed my expertise there. And after graduating, I've worked for a number of different pharma and biotech companies, sort of leveraging that expertise. So I still, I work every day in Sioux Falls. I go to Sanford Research and help teams run experiments there. And those experiments are benefiting a partner company, Amicus, that I mentioned, that is actually in Philadelphia. So it's this
Oh, wow.
kind of unique tie-in that I love to be able to do from South Dakota. Yeah.
So you mentioned cafe. Are you still involved with cafe then and doing this?
I drink their coffee. That's the extent of my involvement these days. I still have friends that are there. I love seeing the people there. But yeah, I kind of transitioned away from that when I went back to school. So that was my exit from that business and the start
Yeah.
of this new chapter.
Can you and if you don't want to hit on it, don't feel
Yep.
like you have to, but definitely a lot of people, entrepreneur types, they want to know about an exit of a company. Can you kind of walk through that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was one of the founders of the business. I was one of the owners, and it was sort of an easy transition for me because the owners that were staying in the business wanted to continue running it. So,
Yep.
I sold my shares to those owners and sort of made this transition into the new space. So it was a very easy, natural exit for me. I wasn't,
That makes sense.
yep, anything too surprising.
And that's all right. A lot of people always think it's some grand thing, but I mean, obviously it had a huge impact on your life and everything, but it was fairly simple, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's, I think the things I learned doing that job, I still use every day. It's, that entrepreneurial spirit comes in very handy in biotech and pharma. So it's an experience
100%.
I wouldn't trade for anything.
So yeah. Well, biotech is full of brilliant people, but what do you think sets your approach apart from those people?
I mean, everyone has their own unique angle, right? And I'd like to think that part of what, the unique insights that I can bring, they come from my background. And that's really having this understanding of these rare lysosomal disorders and also this deep interest in human health and healthy aging. And so sort of being able to bridge that gap. I know and recognize that there's really this underutilized space for taking advantage of that aspect of our cellular health. And I'm excited to work to find new ways to do that moving forward, and bring people together and foster that discussion, because it's thus far I don't think it's quite been capitalized on. So I think that's my unique angle.
Absolutely. So besides obviously talking on a podcast about it, do you have any other educate that you're working on education wise for people
Yeah,
to bring awareness?
I just recently started writing on Substack, and that's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do just about an article a month. The people that are very successful on Substack are writing all the time, but I just don't have time to do that working my full-time job. So
Yep.
I try to post something of really high quality about once a month. And, it's either insights into a new space and trying to make connections that haven't been shared before. Sometimes it's even, experiments that I'm running in my spare time. I've tracked some of my own biomarkers and tried different drug strategies on myself and posted results. So it's infrequent but high quality posts, and it's been great. I have a lot of people very interested, lots of good conversation happening on those posts, so it's something I'll keep doing going forward.
Yeah, I've recently kind of been getting in the Substack world. It's definitely a good replacement from social media.
It is. There's a lot of really amazing content on Substack. It's crazy what some people are able to do.
Yeah, there makes you realize how many smart people are out there.
Yep, definitely.
Can you hit on what's one of the toughest challenges you've faced in your career, whether that's scientific, personal, or business related, and how did you work through that?
Yeah. Well, I think everyone can probably relate to this challenge, and that's balance. I've kind of shared how I have multiple endeavors I'm working on right now, and that's sort of been the case through most of my adult life. While I was finishing my undergraduate degree, that was right during the time when I was running the coffee shop, and also raising one young child. Now I have two children, so it's like, and I was commuting to USD every day, so it was a grind. And it's thankfully it's less of a grind now. I don't have to deal with a commute or anything like that, but I'm still very busy, and always working to find better ways to balance family, work, professional, intellectual, like all of these different domains. I don't know if there's a magical answer. I suppose part of it's just learning to adapt to that struggle, which I feel like I've done, but I think that's been the biggest challenge.
Yeah, I always like to remind people that that big struggle and grind, that doesn't have to be your whole life. That can be a short period of time.
Yep, absolutely.
Work through it, and you could set up your life from there how you want to set it up.
Definitely. Great advice.
Well, you're clearly thinking long term, not just about therapies, but about aging and longevity itself. How do you see your role evolving over time? And what are your thoughts on balancing your career work with long term wealth creation or passive income?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I think I envision myself just naturally progressing and building from where I'm at now. I love my pharma job. It's not that this is something I'm doing for a paycheck while I get to work on more exciting things on the side. It truly isn't like that at all. I love the work that I do day in and day out, as a full-time employee. So I don't see that ending anytime soon, as long as I get to do interesting, exciting science and do things that I think are going to help people. I'm very excited to stay involved there. Sort of on the more independent side with my writing and Substack and everything, definitely going to keep growing there. I'm working on a book. It's with an agent right now being pitched to publishers. So that's something I'm very excited to keep working on going forward, and sort of, pull some of these ideas together into a coherent framework that people can use in their day-to-day lives. So that's the next natural step, and we'll see where it goes from there.
What kind of experience was that writing a book? Did you find it enjoyable or difficult, or both?
Both. I mean, writing is, I'm one of those weird people who likes writing. So it's, that part isn't a grind for me. I like sitting down and writing something that I can be proud of and that I think provides value to people. The more like marketing side of that, and turning that writing into a book proposal and finding an agent and finding a publisher, that's been a huge learning experience. And that's more the side you have to do instead of the side you're excited to do. So that's
Yep.
That's but it's been interesting. I'm glad I've gone through that process and get to see what it looks like. But yeah, it's been a process I've enjoyed.
Where would you recommend if someone is wanting to author something, kind of first steps to take?
Yeah, so I mean the thing you'll learn, and I'm speaking about nonfiction writing, which is, what I'm doing and what probably applies most to your audience. But if you have expertise in a domain and you want to write about that, the first thing that any agent or publisher is going to look at is the platform that you've built. You can have awesome ideas and you can be an excellent writer and you can have the potential to make the best book in the world, but if you don't have a platform where people are already engaged and listening to you, no one's going to care. So
Yep.
I think it's really that platform building side, and that work on that. That's where you probably need to do the initial work. You can write while you're doing that. It doesn't need to happen first, but definitely, I think when people first start in that endeavor, they don't realize how much attention they're going to have to spend on the platform side of things.
That's a great piece of advice. Well, I'm going to go into what I call my rapid fire round. I'll just ask you a question. Don't think about it too hard.
Okay.
You can give as long or short of answer as you want on it.
Okay.
All right, let's start. Most underrated health habit in your opinion?
Ooh, most underrated. I would have said sleep until very recently, but that's getting a lot of attention.
Yes, it is.
So I don't know if I can say sleep anymore. Same with exercise. Boy, it's tough because the underrated things are all getting attention now. Let me think. It'll come to me probably while we're doing other questions, and I'll have a better answer for you.
That's all right. What's your favorite way to recharge outside of work?
Ooh, I love getting outside. I love to go hiking at Newton Hills, or we just got some awesome new inflatable kayaks that we've been taking out on the water. So just, anything that gets me outside in nature.
You saying I have to share a quick story.
Yeah.
I remember 10 years old, my dad bought us some inflatable kayaks. We went on the Big Sioux River. Was all excited for it, right? We've never done it before. I think we ended up spending close to 8 to 9 hours on the river. Of course, it's my dad who brought me. Didn't bring any sunscreen, no snacks or anything.
Total dad move. Yep.
Yep. Had a miserable time, but I love kayaking now. So.
Yeah, it must have been a long day. Did you pop the kayaks, get stuck on some rocks or anything, or did you survive?
We did have to, and this was the fun part because I thought it was all cool, kind of MacGyvering it. We picked them up and walked over there. So no, we were good in that sense. It worked out perfectly in that way. But just being 10 years old for that long of a trip, maybe I'd recommend easing your kids into it more.
Yeah. That's a delicate balance, getting kids to love outdoor activities like that. I feel you. I have an answer for your first question now too, by the way.
Yeah, hit me with it.
Yep. So we talked about exercise and thinking about, an 8 to 10 hour kayaking day and that sort of thing. For me, this is something I've had to learn. It's the opposite side. It's rest. Actually finding time throughout the day to just, sit and let your heart rate come down and restore your parasympathetic nervous system activity. All of these things are huge, and it's something I never did. I was always, I just naturally want to go all the time.
Yep.
But it stresses you out, and you can see that like on your biomarkers. I wear a biometric ring that tracks all of this, and getting those intentional rest periods really does good things for my physiology. And I think it's probably ignored by a lot of people like me who just like to be moving all the time.
That's a great answer. I think we'll end the rapid fire with that answer. So, Jon, this has been fantastic. If listeners want to follow your work or get in touch with you, what's the best way to connect them with you?
Yeah, thanks. So that would be probably on Substack. My Substack newsletter is called Translation. You can also find it by searching my name, Jon Brudvig. Subscribe there. You'll get my Substack newsletter. Also, if you like getting these sorts of insights on a different platform like LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm also on Blue Sky, so you can follow me any of those places.
Great. Well, thanks again, Jon, and thanks everyone for listening in.
Awesome. Thanks, Levi. It was great.
Know someone with serious grit and a great growth story? Send them our way at grittogrowthpodcast.com/guest.